Hey folks, it's Ray with Taste Radio. Right now, I'm honored to be sitting down with Christy Goldsby, who is the founder of Honey Mamas. Christy, great to see you.
It's really, really nice to see you as well. I'm thrilled to be in the seat right now, looking
Yeah,
at
up
you.
and at 'em, up early, 8:30
Yeah,
a.m. in Portland, where
yes,
you're based. You mentioned that you're a morning
absolutely.
person. I am not. I'm a night owl myself. Not going out and getting wild. Just
Yeah,
I do a lot of work at night, cleaning at home, and then just busy work related to the job.
yeah, yeah. It's those types of things. It's important to capture those times where you can both release what you need to get out of your mind and also just take care of the business. It's totally get it.
Yeah, although I have one problem. I do snack a little bit too often at night.
I do the same thing. That's
Yeah,
what I snack.
and
Yeah, the longer I stay up, the more trouble I get into.
I'm very appreciative of my snacks, and I'm very appreciative of the snacks that you sent me, including a new line that Honey Mamas is
Yes,
introducing very soon. Um,
yes,
I haven't snacked on these yet at night, but I'm sure I will. And these are these wonderful, amazing truffle treats. I'm going to pull this
yes.
one. This is your chocolate cake variety.
Yep.
Talk about this line, and hopefully Mike, our CMO, might will not hear me because he's going to come and raid. Anyone who's listened to Taste Radio know that Mike Schneider is a fiend, folks, for Honey Mamas. So, but yeah, please tell us about this new line.
We appreciate his fiendom. It's been both like fun and entertaining and like a bright ray of sunshine every time I see Mike wherever I go. It's really fun to watch how much he eats right there. Um, but yeah, so we are super excited to launch this line, the truffle treats, at the Expo East. We'll be at the Harvest Fest booth. I think it's 9:20, so that day ahead of Expo East, and we'll be tasting them out. It's going to be really fun and really exciting. This is a kind of a huge new line for us because it really is differentiated from the multi-serve line, which we've had for, almost 11 years. But we'll be there. And, I think the most fun thing about it for us is that it is going to be meeting consumers kind of where they're at, and where we've been listening for a really long time about what works for them. And it is super consumable. It's just this cute little 1 ounce bar that it snaps in half, so you can get two out of it. And it's on the go. And we've got 3 delicious flavors. We've got the mocha crunch, the chocolate cake, and the cinnamon roll. And all of these flavors, I'm telling you, we have gone through, research studies and, both consumer research studies and in-house, and then, had them online and sold them in grocery stores as well, at least the chocolate cake, which is our number one. But the cinnamon roll, for example, is topped with cinnamon. It is literally, you put it in your mouth and you feel like you are having like the best breakfast you've ever had in your entire life. So it's super exciting for me to see this evolution of the company. And yeah, so we'll be launching it at Expo East, and it's very fun to be here on Taste Radio to be able to give your listeners the first little news of that. And Nosh and BevNet have always been so supportive of us, and we're launching it in Target the week of 9/17, and then in Whole Foods Market in November. So
Outstanding.
and then you can find them online as well. And yeah, I'm excited to hear everybody's feedback.
Well, I can find them right by my side here on the side table because I've got 3 boxes. And again, thank you so much for sending them. I can't wait to bite into this cinnamon roll. For breakfast, that sounds amazing because I'm always that person with a cup of coffee but no food, and I'm just like I
Yep.
just need something, and this looks like the
Yeah.
perfect little treat for that. A raw honey treat, described as a raw honey treat, which sounds even better.
Yeah.
And each variety is made with either 9 or 10 ingredients, real foods to be more specific. So very exciting
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. That call out was fun too, to kind of go in that direction,
Yeah.
is like really kind of calling out how many real foods are in it, and no fillers.
Yeah. Christy, I speak with a lot of entrepreneurs for Taste Radio and just in general, and a lot of them are pretty young. They are in their early 20s. Occasionally we'll find some folks in their 30s. I was pretty interested to hear that you had started Honey Mamas, shall we say, later into your adulthood. And I'm wondering, do you think that the company would be where it is today had you started it in your 20s?
Such a great question. I'm so glad that you asked that. Because I don't think it would be. I think that the fact that I was able to start it when I did, I had lived some life. I had worked as a restaurant manager for years and years and years. I had done front of the house, back of the house in restaurants actually my whole life. I had owned a bakery and coffee roasting company for several years. I had two kids who were in middle school at the time that I launched the company. And I really feel like that life experience really has shifted. Number one, I think my ability to know myself. And so that alone allowed for decision making that maybe when I didn't have the experience, even just of the bakery, for example, that I wouldn't have been able to I might have been made a little bit more bold decisions that were around getting super attached to ideas and stuff like that. Whereas I think being in my mid 40s and being more seasoned, as they'd say, just having that sense of like, yeah, I know where to kind of get out of my own way here a little bit and allow for the broadest opportunity for success, rather than, I don't know, thinking I could do it all and things like that.
Yeah, I think the experience of owning and operating a business, as you mentioned, your bakery, certainly can help you understand just the general basics of running a business. I think when some
Yeah.
folks get into entrepreneurship, they're like, whoa, I didn't realize that you had to do this, or this costs this much, or, margins are important, or, how you find suppliers and how you hire people. All these different things I'm sure are so helpful when you get into CPG if you've had that experience before. Um, and, with the bakery did come CPG. It wasn't just a standalone shop that you had. You eventually started selling frozen products. Talk about your interest in getting into packaged frozen products and what you learned from that experience.
Well, I think that it's kind of important to mention, as you're saying that, is that one of my, I think, strongest personality traits is that I really get excited about ideas and I don't shy away from things, especially when it feels like truthful to me to explore. And so we had the brick and mortar space, Blue Gardenia, and we had coffee roasting and full bakery. My mom and my sister and myself were doing that as well. And one of the owners of New Seasons was one of our regular customers. We didn't know who he was, but he approached us and said, he loved these pecan rolls. Would you guys be interested in bringing these in the freezer section? It's this hugely growing category in the grocery stores and blah, blah, blah. And, I was like, I love this idea because I love that we could take something that's already so popular just in our bakery space, and be able to offer to people all over, or regionally or whatever. And so we did, and we learned a tremendous amount from that just based on what it would require to manufacture a product versus having a brick and mortar space. So that really was kind of the original reason why we got into that whole CPG in the first place, was because an opportunity kind of came our way and we took it. And once we got a grant, we built out a little kind of manufacturing area in our bakery, and we launched. And it, for me, was this really exciting. I kind of saw it as like a new opportunity to dive deeper into expressing what we already were doing really well at the bakery. That was kind of my connection to it.
You eventually closed the bakery and the coffee roasting shop. And I have to think that was a tough decision anytime you close a business. But getting back into entrepreneurship was also, to me, kind of a surprising thing, because I think when people get that bug and it doesn't necessarily work out, it's just like, you know what, I just need to find something else to do with my life. But why did you decide to get into another business?
I think what it was for me was there was a lot going on. For one thing, I had during this time that the bakery was struggling, we were kind of having a hard time as a business, as a family. And I had kind of stepped away a little bit anyway, and I had done a cleanse with my best friend at the time who had a really severe autoimmune disease. And I was just doing this cleanse to be supportive to her because she was really struggling and was not getting a diagnosis that was at all good. It was called myasthenia gravis, and it was a lot like MS. And so I said I'd do this cleanse with her. We do the cleanse, 10 days later, 2 weeks later, really, I start feeling better than I felt in years. And I was going through all the stress and strain of the experience of having to leave the bakery and, kind of moving in that direction of closing the bakery and family strife. So the amount of emotional strain that I was under at the time, that in itself was so affected by the food, by changing my diet, I kind of couldn't believe it. And so she actually turned her autoimmune disease around she learned that she was a celiac at that same time through that cleanse. And I felt better than I'd felt in a really, really long time. And it helped, and it gave me this sense of resourcing that I didn't feel I had access to, at that time. So there was a pretty huge aha moment that happened for me. So yes, the bakery was closing, but at the same time, I thought, I want to recultivate what we were offering, which is just a huge, really personal value of mine, which is connection with people, that making things for others. I think, and I'm a creator in my heart of hearts, I'm a creative person. And I think that making things for people gives me so much joy. Making dinner for people or cooking for people or baking, any of those things. But I recognized, number one, I had 2 young daughters who I felt, who I really wanted to be financially independent as a mother, and to be able to create a livelihood that was not only something that would be potentially lifelong for me, but that gave me meaning. And that was really, really important. I think it kind of, maybe this goes back to being 44, I don't know. But anyway, so I got excited about how can I create a product that kind of reminds me of my favorite things that we made at the bakery. Made this like pan forte. It was like this Italian fruitcake thing, very kind of dense and fudgy. Those types of like rustic, like walking down a cobblestone street in France and you walk into a mom and pop shop and you get the most beautiful, delicious, whatever it is. And they fold it up with butcher paper and send you on your way. And that's like a daily experience. That was kind of what I was wanting to somehow figure out how to create and put out there in the world.
Well, it sounds like you saw the potential to have a big brand. I mean, talking about being
Yes.
financially independent, I
Yes.
guess you could be, even if you operated a small brand. There's plenty of them around. But when you first ideated around Honey Mamas, did you think it was mostly going to be a sort of regional, local, artisanal brand? Or did you have these aspirations for it to be where it is now, national, and Target and Costco and Whole Foods, which I'm sure is mind-blowing still. But I mean, did you have that feeling that it could be that?
It's mind-blowing and it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Every day. I was thinking about this. We were kind of talking about it before, and what I really envisioned when I started it was, I thought, when I first made the bars, I had tried several different things, and when I first made this particular recipe, I was so elated because it literally hit the mark on all the different things that I was kind of wanting to originally go for. And I ate it, and I pretty much knew right away that this had potential to be a really simple line of products. I kind of saw the image in my mind of what that could look like, and it really was that like butcher wrapped, thing. And it was like the same deliciousness as the fudge that I used to make with my grandma when all the time I was growing up. And so I applied to the Portland Farmers Market pretty much within the first couple of weeks of figuring out that I had a recipe. I had done all the numbers, figured out my supply chain, and realized the retail price I would have to charge for it. I was like, okay, this has legs, and this hits those margins that I knew that the grocery stores, were going to be looking for, it was like 40%. So I was like, okay, I think this is doable. I applied to the farmer's market. They had rejected me 3 other times before when I applied with different product ideas, because they didn't, whatever, it was like a sauerkraut idea, a juice company, and then a salad company idea. There were all these like healthy concepts. And what these Honey Mamas bars were they were the cultured vegetables was what I was going to do. It was like more functional. What I loved about the Honey Mamas bars was that it was a product that had a very specific function, which was to nourish your body with super foods, really nutrient rich foods, but it was just simply a pleasurable experience. And it was functional, but it was like really about the joy and the fun and the deliciousness of it. And so when I got into the farmer's market, and I kind of thought, this will tell me so much, and I'm going to baby step this mofo. I'm going to baby step this business because I do not want to get ahead of my skis, kind of like we did with the bakery. Like we just kind of try to do too much, and that was a huge learning. And so I got into the market, and but I kind of was so excited about it that I really right away started, I had my little package, which I have right here with me.
There it is, the original.
This was I brought this because I thought it'd be fun to look at. And I just started dropping it off to, just local co-op buyers and calling them up. I was super nervous and calling them up and saying, hey, can I have a, meeting with you? This is what I sell. I didn't even know which buyer to talk to. And same with New Seasons. Whole Foods I actually met at the farmer's market, but because I was getting really positive responses from them, and they were saying, yes, let's, New Seasons was like, let's put this on, in 9 of our stores. And I think they had 13 at the time. And so I got that excitement around what I think I felt like I wanted to do was potentially be able to build a regional company. I think that was about where I felt like I could touch. I felt like I would be able to have a sense of the growth and feel a sense of containment. And then beyond that, yes, I saw that, but I knew that was going to require quite a bit of help going national, and it has.
I love the phrase, I was going to baby step this mofo. That should be like a bumper sticker, especially in our industry.
Right?
Because it is those small steps that you use as the foundation for building a business.
Absolutely.
And, especially starting out in a regional grocery chain like New Seasons, and figuring out what works, what's resonating, what's not working, how to talk to buyers. These learnings are all really, really helpful as you grow and scale. So going back to New Seasons, how did you cultivate that relationship? What made it work? What made it something that you said, we can build upon this?
The relationship, I think what really made the big difference was that I had no entitlement around believing that this was just going to sell if I just put it up on the shelf. I thought, I'm in 150%. I was very present with the buyers and very committed and listening to what worked for them and what works for other successful brands that they see go on the shelf. I'm this little tiny, nothing handmade product. And so I'm like, I need to learn from these people. And I think that perspective was huge, to be able to take that perspective and then go, okay, so they have a demo program. They're like, great, if you would just come in here and you would demo these, like, usually people come in every couple months, that would really help to get it off the ground. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, so I'm going to double down on what they just said, and I'm going to go in every 3 weeks, and I'm going to make sure that this product sells. And then I think also just listening to kind of what they're saying around looking at different parts of the stores and helping them, talking with them about where does this product seem to fit, because it obviously was, it's 2013, so there wasn't a whole lot else on the shelf. But I just feel like that those relationships, and always believing, and going, I'm going to need to put 150% into this out of the gate and then some. to get, if I want to be successful, I'm not just going to plop it down, and really keeping that very lively back and forth conversation with the buyer. I just had a local business person reach out to me, and she's like, hey, do you know somebody who I could hire to do demos for me? And she's, really, really tiny still. And I just said, I hate to say this is not what you want to hear, but your relationship with that buyer and that consumer is number one. If you can hire somebody to help you make your product in your kitchen, rather than step away from the demo and the buyer, I would do that right now, just because that's golden.
That's such great advice. And I do want to talk about demos and marketing in a bit. You had mentioned that there weren't a lot of products in a particular shelf in 2013. That's the refrigerated shelf. And, we do see a healthy amount of refrigerated snacks in grocery stores today. But in 2013, 10 years ago, just didn't see many. And to explain to a consumer or a buyer why there should be a set, or why this product is better for you than a traditional snack, takes some education, takes some really focused communication. Originally, or currently, they're described as refrigerated truffle bars. That was not the original communication. How did you describe Honey Mamas at the outset?
Well, I described it as a delicious, nourishing fudge that was sold in the refrigerator. So that was kind of how I used to talk about it was called Nectar Fudge. That was the first name of the product. And really what would happen was they would try it. And then as soon as they tried it, they had their own experience understanding where it would fit too. Because
the retail buyers you're talking about.
Yeah, the retail buyers. And so that I think went a really long way for them to be like, oh, okay, this needs, like New Seasons, for example, it was like, oh, this definitely needs to be in the bakery. Most other stores, it's, like whatever, it'll be dairy or whatever, just because that's what happens to be that grab and go, healthy, better for you set. But yeah, I think that a lot of it is just this kind of, in the early days, it was about, this is this kind of fudgy, made from 5 Whole Foods treat. And it's so funny because RX Bar launched, I can't remember how many years after I did. And I was just dying because he had that list of ingredients, and that was his whole thing, their whole thing. And that's really was my original concept. My first drawings that I have of the package was literally to list the ingredients. Because I'm like, if you list these ingredients and you call it something fun, people will know immediately what they're getting. Because I've never been able to use the word chocolate because I don't use cocoa liquor in the bars. And so I've always had to get, creative with calling it whatever. So Cocoa Nectar Fudge was the first name. And it's always been confusing to people. So where we are now is we've come a long way.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned RX Bar. I remember I was at the Winter Fancy Food Show in San Francisco, and I think this was 2017. And I had seen their booth, and I was like, wow, what is this? I'd never seen this before. And they had just shifted their packaging from this like big kind of like awkward logo on the front of pack that said RX Bar to the logo on the top and the ingredients listed on the front. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And then I think it was like 2 years later, they sold for like $660 million. And it was just like, what? Okay. Good idea. Pretty good idea.
I was kind of kicking myself on that one. But that really was kind of the thinking originally with like how to sell it and, put the ingredients on, because it was literally 5 whole food ingredients.
When you were hearing from customers about why they were buying the product, or when the first time they tried the product, were they talking about the better for you aspect of it? Were they talking about those superfood ingredients, or was it much more about sort of, this is a delicious, indulgent snack that I can have, in place of, a traditional snack?
It was both. I would say I was surprised at how many people, though, I would talk to. I would say upwards of man, at least 50% of the people who would come back in time again would say, oh my gosh, I'm a celiac, or I cannot eat dairy, or I cannot eat soy, or I can, or I have an autoimmune, or, blah, blah, like a lot of dietary restrictions. Those were really the core kind of early adopters of the product. And the fact that it was delicious was like literally would bring tears to people's eyes because of the fact that so much stuff tastes like absolute crap, that they would find at the grocery store. It just tastes like cardboard, or it just did not have any love in it. Love is there, can be there. And so those were really huge. Those early kind of conscious eaters are critical, as we, have continued on as years, and the social media started picking up and stuff with that as well. Then it became more and more about kind of more this like life optimizer demographic, which is definitely our demographic now, but people, and being able to hear from them on social media too, because this is like 2015, 2014, 2015, 2016, and people starting to just share. And a lot of it was about, those consumers of feeling like really wanting to feel empowered, wanting to eat something that actually made them feel better, no matter if they had autoimmune or any of those things, but just simply choosing, products that were clean and delicious, and then wanting to share it with everybody that they knew. That was like a huge part of that.
I'd never heard that term, life optimizer, but I like it. Someone who is looking to eat clean, healthy food, but definitely wants it to be delicious. I guess that's one part of being a life optimizer. I'm sure, doing other things to benefit good health has a lot to do with it as well.
Absolutely. And kind of just really efficient in what they're doing. They're out there, they're getting stuff done. They're moving and changing and sharing it with people. But I think it's really about like, I want the best that I can find for my body, but it really needs to be good and high quality. And then I'm going to tell like every bit that I know about it.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I feel like the biggest opportunity for Honey Mamas, if I were an investor, would be in that indulgent aspect of the brand. I mean, certainly the good for you, the superfoods, the good for you aspect of the brand is huge, but to reach that everyday consumer, they want to love the taste of it. And it feels like there was a very specific point in this journey where Honey Mamas went from, hey, we're a superfood product, to, hey, we're an indulgent product with superfoods. And it seems like that happened around at the time of your Series A round.
We had started doing a brand refresh before we did the Series A, knowing that we had the Series A coming up. So we knew that we were going to have the funding, because at first we were like, we can't work even with a kind of creative agency, and we were really just looking at like local designers and things like that. But the biggest influence I would say that the investors had on that process was, yes, number one, finding investors who were really excited and saw the value of doing a brand refresh, and also just being able to be the funding for it. And when we first started doing the brand refresh and looking at that, I knew I needed to pick a lane. And this was, almost 7 years into the company, and I had never changed the packaging. I hadn't done any of that.
It's probably not a surprise to people that you don't nail the rebrand on the first try. You probably don't nail the rebrand on the second try. In the case of Honey Mamas, I think you told me it took 20 tries. And I mean, but that tells me though that you know when something is right.
It's not that black and white. I mean, I think that, so for us, and I don't remember if it was quite 20, but it was a lot. It was a lot. Really, I think that there was so much to it where we leaned into each other as a team, our internal team. So really there was just like four of us, we would print out what the creatives would send us, and we would literally go to the store, we would put these different ideas on our bars, and we would line them up on the shelf, and we would we might be in love with something that when we're looking at it on the screen or whatever, and then even if we print it out and we're looking at it in front of us, but when I put it on shelf, it had a completely different thing that I was actually going for. So I think it's just that dedication to, again, being willing to, stay true to yourself, not making really rash, fast decisions.
Well, the new packaging is stunning, and I know there's some tweaks that you're still going to be making, and will probably continue to make for the life cycle of this brand. I can't recall, was this the iteration that I saw when Honey Mama's was in Trader Joe's?
No, the Trader Joe's was really specific to what they wanted.
Okay.
So no, this is much later from Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's, gosh, I wish I had a picture of that to show you.
Well, we'll find
yeah.
one and we'll include it in the video. But when I did see Honey Mama's in Trader Joe's, I'm like, incredible! This brand has made it.
Yeah.
Especially if you
That's
can
how
make
I felt too.
especially if you can make it in Trader Joe's with your own branding, because obviously, 95% of the products in there are all private label.
Yeah.
Private label for Trader Joe's, that is. So if you can actually get in there and have that kind of awareness as your own brand is pretty amazing. A huge win, and then a pretty shocking disco. It feels like it was about a year in the stores.
Yeah, not even. It was like not even quite a year. It was so many lessons learned there. I mean, I think that with Trader Joe's, I met them. They kind of started approaching us at the Fancy Food Show East, I want to say 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of just started that relationship. And then I think it was like a year later, not even a year later, I talked to them again. And so I called them back. I said, well, what would it take? What do you guys require? And they were just like, gave me a little bit of information. We would probably take a couple of SKUs, and this is where they would go. This would be the price that we would need them to be. And so they gave me some very basic information. And we got it figured out. I created recipes that were kind of specific just for them. And they were kind of takes on recipes that we currently had. And, but they knew they're really specific about knowing what they wanted, which was great. And I appreciated that because they definitely showed that they knew their consumer, but had a really good relationship with them. Like they came up, they looked at our factory. They were really impressed by what we were doing. And so again, relationship every step of the way. There was even a buyer change between when I first started talking to Trader Joe's and then when we got in. And just always kind of was very real with them, and they were pretty upfront with us about what they needed, and they were invested in bringing the product in, and then they brought it in, and things were we were actually doing really quite well. It was over 25% of our revenue that year, and it was less than a year in. And right before Christmas, we got a call from our buyer, and she just said, we've decided not to bring Honey Mamas back next year. And she didn't give any reasons. She said, essentially, it was like you're meeting your dollar metric, but not your velocity metric. And so, we thought that we were meeting both. So it was a little confusing and definitely deflating. There's no doubt about it. It was a huge hit. We were literally about to go into a Series A raise at that moment. So, and little did I know COVID was going to be right around the corner. So but it was a similar feeling of vulnerability, really losing Trader Joe's. And then when COVID happened, I was like, geez, are we going to stay in business? Like we're manufacturers too. I think the silver lining for me was, our buyer essentially said, it's not as much about Honey Mama as it is about this particular category is getting squeezed tighter and tighter every year on margins. And so you are being compared to like deli turkey and bacon. And the amount of velocities that are going through that particular category, it's almost pretty much impossible for you to be able to keep up with that. And so, and the margins were crazy. So that kind of made me feel a little bit better. And then she just said, hey, I just asked her all the reasons that would have, kind of went into it. And we were able to maintain a relationship, and I still have a relationship with her. Just, I see her, talk to her fairly regularly. And so I think just being able to know if there's a time and a place for Honey Mamas to have a product or, whatever the timing is right for Trader Joe's, that opportunity is still there. And I think that's huge. That's like the hugest takeaway for me.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it was a curse and a blessing in that
Yeah.
you learned a lot. I mean, it sucked, but you learned a lot, and it didn't break your Series A. You did have to explain it to investors,
Yeah.
but what was their reaction to hearing this, especially that 25% of your business had evaporated?
They saw it for what it was. I think that they knew Trader Joe's well enough and had worked with brands who'd been in Trader Joe's. And so it wasn't a surprise, but they definitely didn't count the revenue.
And investors often say they want to see great velocities, and it sounds like you were doing great velocities
Yeah.
at Trader Joe's, and they're probably thinking, oh well, if they can replicate any part of this business in another retailer, this is a great investment. Investors also want to see great management, and I think this leads to a conversation about day-to-day roles and handing over the reins as CEO to Jared, who's now your CEO. And one of the things that I respect a lot about entrepreneurs is their ability to know themselves and know their brands, and also know when to delegate and let go. It's tough. It's tough to say, I'm going to, let someone else raise my child, run my business. But sometimes it has to happen. What have you learned about delegating, and talk about that process of, stepping away from that CEO position and giving it to Jared?
Yeah. So in 2016, my dad, who was kind of my bud, died of a heart attack really, suddenly. And I'd been in business for a few years, and we were just thinking about, getting into a new manufacturing space and expanding that. And it really took the wind out of my sails for a while. When that happened, obviously, it was like just a big life change. And at that point, work was actually amazing because it was this great refuge for me to be able to pour energy into something that was really healthy and love the company, and we were doing well and all of that stuff. So, and great team. But that was a level of stress that I did not have going on before that occurred. And fast forward, we did move into a new space, the space we're in now, 12,000 square feet of manufacturing and storage. And so we moved into the space. And right about that time too, 2017, I started thinking, I knew that the company was heading towards national growth. And that really was what I was, when I took that next step of committing to that bigger manufacturing space. I also felt like I was committing to this next level of growth for the company because, that space I knew could take us to upwards of 40, 50 million. And I'm ambitious in that sense. Didn't want to stop the growth. And so, I started just thinking it would be nice if I had a partner who was good at some of the stuff that I'm really struggling with these days, operationally, where again, I'm a highly creative person. I like projects. I like fun. and I I hate to say it out loud, but I do. And it's really part of, I think, what makes the company who it is, and that's a really important part of who we are. But I was getting pretty shut down. And then I recognized that was really starting to impact the team and the company, and not a great way. So I hired a CFO, a part-time CFO at that time. We had just passed a couple million in revenue, and I hired a CFO, just a day or two a week. He was fantastic and lived right down the street from me, part of the Portland community, business community. And then the next year in 2018, we were thinking about doing a convertible note round. I was still feeling like I was getting taxed as the CEO, and kind of just that the kind of mental, what it did to my mind to have that title, the pressure that I was feeling. I was needing to kind of figure out if there was a way to find somebody who would be interested in taking that hat on, so that I could feel a little bit more comfortable in my creative skin, and wasn't really looking particularly or finding anybody. I just knew I was thinking about it. And then all of a sudden, this guy, John Maroney, who's on our board, he was, a dear friend of mine. He's like, I've got this guy who is looking for a position in sales potentially. He's really great. He's got an MBA. And he's like, would you be willing to talk to him about doing something for Honey Mamas or people that you might know? And I was like, well, we can't afford to hire anybody right now, but I'd be happy to talk to this guy. And I had met him briefly once before, because he was selling salt for a Bitterman Salt Company, and they were trying to sell us salt. Anyway, I sit down with this guy, Jared Schwartz, who's now the CEO, to have coffee. And I want to say it was within the first 30 minutes of that conversation that I not only knew that I needed to figure out a way to bring him on, not as a salesperson, but as the GM for the company. But I felt that it was like, this is like a brother from another mother. Like, and also he had the business acumen, the interest, the drive, just the skill set that literally matched mine. And then he also had a personality type that was like a puzzle piece for mine. Like, I'm a spaz, and I like to be out there and doing things, and I cannot be boxed in, and I'm just highly creative. And he is like the steadiest Eddie, super sharp mind, very driven to be around, all the businessy things. Long story short, we figured out a way to bring him in, and he did start in sales, and then I think he was GM within a few months, and then he became CEO that following year. So 2019, the beginning of 2019, he started as CEO. I felt like I just won the lottery, because I just felt so much lighter hearted at that point. And it has not been super linear or easy all the time to be in this process. But I do have to say, I would not have chosen I feel really lucky that I found the partner that I did, and I think he's doing a fantastic job. He really cares about the company, and he's very good at what he does. And I did not, there's just a lot that I didn't have, and I have all the other stuff. I'm able to be available as the chairman of the board, and really driving the biggest strategic kind of choices for the company, and then also doing being able to interact with our community, and then creating products.
If you actually had won the lottery, you would have been able to pay him right up front and not worried about it. How did you end up paying him?
Oh, we baby stepped it, like everything, man. That's what we did. He didn't get paid a ton at first. Let's just put it that way. But the guy knows how to negotiate, so he negotiated for what he needed at the time. And then we did a convertible note, and then we did the Series A. So the Series A, nobody was making $1 million at Honey Mamas, I'll tell you that much, during those days. And I think he recognized, for him, he had not been a CEO before, and he recognized that was a fantastic opportunity. And he recognized he also, shared, I think, the sense that we have a really good working partnership dynamic, and really liked Ed, the CFO. And that, and then we brought on, once we did the Series A, we brought on a director of manufacturing and VP marketing. Angela is our director, or VP marketing now, and then this director of manufacturing. And it was that Series A then allowed, a company who, just a year and a half prior was me, still kind of in that CEO hat, doing my best. He was GM, really bringing synchronicity and streamlining the systems for the company, and then also the ethos and the people, allowing it to kind of have those structures put into place to be able to build a company that is able to be, a $50 million company. And that's where that started. And so that team, we have a lot of tenure in that team, and that's now in 2023. This is just, I think, this year in 2024 is definitely going to be our best years yet.
Christy, we've been talking for a while, and I feel like this has flown by, and we could talk for like another 2 hours about where Honey Mamas is going. And, I think there's just so much runway for the brand. I'm so excited to see its future. It sounds like we just have to do this again in about a year's time
Let's
and
do.
talk about where you are then.
That
But in
would
the
be fun.
meantime, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today. I know our audience is going to love our chat. And thank you so much for sending all the new products. I can't wait to dive into them.
You are so welcome. It's such a pleasure, Ray. Nice to be here.